There are many things in your life and in your career that you cannot control, but every day you choose your attitude.
Welcome back to the TroopHR Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Bradley. Today I sit down with Paul Yater, Chief People Officer at 84 Lumber, to explore the intersection of culture, career growth, and modern HR leadership. From his unconventional path from IT and HR to leading a people-first organization with over 7,000 associates, Paul shares his insights into building culture, developing talent, and removing friction in the employee experience. Today, we start the conversation on the ground floor by defining what is workplace culture.
Yeah, I think it's everything. I think it's what makes companies go. I think it's what differentiates, great from good. Drucker would tell you, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think culture is critically important and probably one of the most important in defining things of a company and of whether somebody fits and will be successful and can be successful in the overall direction and outcome of an organization.
And everyone knows that a great Marvel movie always starts with a good origin story. So before we get into talking about how you've shaped culture, I'd love to hear how someone from IT ends up running HR.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've been here for about 9 years now, and I am an IT guy by trade and by career. Came in, put together a team, built out a strategy and a roadmap, spent a lot of time listening and meeting with our field folks and our teams and our associates out there servicing our customers every day. And we had turned the HR position a couple of times. I report to the chief operating officer, and I could see the stress that it was putting on him. We all know we need him focused on the mothership and driving operations and driving results. And I raised my hand and said, hey, look, if you'll take a shot on me, I'll take a chance at this. And he's like, you know what? I like the relationships you've built. I like the strategy you've put together. I like the team you've built. Our people are our most important asset. I think we need to become more contemporary and more modern on the HR side. Yeah, let's do this. And 9 years later, 8.5 years later, or whatever it is, that was about a year into my career. I'm still doing both. So that's the long answer to a short question.
What I loved about that and what resonated with me is you knew the business, right? The opportunity to serve your clients, which are employees out in the field, solving their IT issues, likely gave you a lot of insight into how the business operates. And maybe this is a hot take, and maybe I'll get some listener emails on this, but I think some of the best HR leaders are those that come from the business. A lot about the HR side can be taught, but what you had done and understanding how the business operates sounds like a key way to building that trust with employees. Now, the interesting part about culture, since you've taken over this role, unlike many answers in IT, whereas it is, have you turned it off and then back on again? When it comes to culture, the reset may be a bit more challenging. So what are some of the challenges that you started to work through, and how did you start to shape them?
When I think about 84's culture and what we are, it was celebrate it, teach it, train it, maintain it, tell stories about it, protect it. It wasn't shape it, change it, those kind of things. I mean, what this place has been built since 1956. It's family oriented, it's collaborative, it's people that want to help. It's not political. It's blue collar, roll up your sleeves, get her done. We are here to help our customers. Some cultures or some companies are product companies or brand companies or marketing companies. I would tell you we are absolutely two things. We are one, a people company, and two, we are a stores company. At the top of that food chain, at the top of the pyramid is 100% our stores, our 7,000 plus associates that are out there helping our customers every day. When we are here at team headquarters, we are here to help them, get them the tools, the processes, whatever it needs to help them do their job better, faster, smarter, however we define that. I travel a lot. I've spent a lot of store visits with both Frank Cicero, our chief operating officer, and Maggie Hardy, our owner. And, they never leave a store without asking, what do you need? How can we help? What can we do better? So there is a lot of that listening and gaining input and having trust and belief in, really wanting people to be successful and giving them what they need to be successful and figuring out what that is and listening is absolutely part of that.
And for some of the listeners that may not be as accustomed to what 84 Lumber is, can you give us some insight into the 7,000 team members you have Are these all retail? What does it look like?
It's a mixture of both. So there are, exempt and non-exempt employees. Our entry-level position is our manager trainee. That's somebody that's on a track to be a store manager in about 3 years if you're really good. So very much a promote from within company. About 96% of our store leadership team, all the way from our chief operating officer and divisional vice presidents and area managers, started their career as that manager trainee. So very much a teach it, train it, pay it forward, build it for the next generation. Part of our culture also is everybody at 84 has that person that was very influential or has been very influential that took them under their wing and helps them and gave them guidance and taught them the ropes and taught them product knowledge, taught them store operations, taught them how to run a P&L, taught them how to sell, whatever it is that their function they're in. So yeah, about several hundred, almost 1,000 MTs out there, co-managers, store managers. We've got 320 locations in 34 states, 1,100 outside sales folks running around managing customer relationships and really managing the sales process and the sales relationships with our customers. So, and then lots of support positions in between: coordinators, AP clerks, dispatchers, yard folks that help, with the supply chain and loading and unloading freight and helping our customers. So we've got manufacturing facilities where we've got production workers and production managers and dispatchers and the whole like. So it's a lot of people out there trying to help our customers, help build the American dream for folks.
I love this story. And I love how so many of your senior leaders started out at the entry-level jobs, almost reminiscent of, I know quite a number of folks over at Disney, and most of their senior leaders started out within the company or had been with the company for 20 years. Or started out in the goofy suit is always the joke, right?
Sure.
I love how you've developed this career pathway in the truest sense of you could have an entire career within the organization. Now, when you took on the chief people officer leading the HR team role of the organization, and you started to do a listening tour now from a new lens, as the head of people, what were some of the things that you started to hear almost immediately from the workforce when you talked to them?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, recruiting. I mean, I think finding the right folks that fit, the culture that we just talked about is critically important. And then finding people that are willing to bet on themselves and fit that opportunity that we have. So, between promotion and growth and opportunity, those MT roles, they get promoted typically within 6 months, and then they're moving to a co-manager or dispatcher or some other operational role. So there's a lot of movement in that role. So it's a continuous need across the organization. So I think focusing on the messaging, are we telling the story? Are we telling it in the right places? Are we finding the right kind of cultural fits? We did a lot of the day in the life. I mean, when somebody says manager trainee, this isn't a desk job where you're putting on a suit and tie every day. This is, you're going to learn a ton, but you're going to load an unknown freight, right? You might have to clean the store one day, but you're going to learn how to do sales, how to build your own book of business, how to run a P&L, product knowledge, inventory, various things that you're going to learn along the way. But somebody that's willing to do that and understands that. So we did a lot of day in the life, making sure we had the right training and support. We're making this promise of this up the ladder and career path and making sure we had structure around it. We had a lot of things in place, right? There was a manager camp, there was sales camp, there were things like that, but we put a lot of pieces and processes around it. Those first 2 weeks, you think about that manager trainee who shows up in that store and we say, you don't need to know anything about construction or building materials. We'll teach it to you. And that's all true. Those first couple of weeks are hard when you don't know anything and the phone's ringing and the manager's busy and the co-manager who you're working with is with another customer. We did checklists and onboarding checklists, and we did QR codes in the back of the store where you could, how do I get the product knowledge? How do I get here and there? So just putting some structure and process around that onboarding, making sure we got folks to lumber camp. And there's a sweet spot of that. Typically, that's at 4 to 6 weeks in your career. You've got to have had enough time to be able to absorb it and understand it and know it and put it in context. Too soon is not enough. You don't absorb it. You don't really take as much from it. Too late, you're like, okay, I needed to learn that stuff sooner. So there's really that sweet spot and making sure we had the commitment to get folks to that training. We've got an on-site training facility here that's booked 50 out of 52 weeks a year. We've got a learning management solution that's got 7 modules as part of that manager trainee process that teaches you the things that you need to be learning and how to continue to grow and develop and the skills to hone that you need. So those are some of the things that I heard. Some was, hey, strengthen our strengths. And some were, hey, look, we've got to fill in some gaps here and fill in some cracks between, recruiting, continuing to build on the strength of training and deliver on some of the promises that we were telling in that recruiting journey.
Now, I want to get into technology here in a minute and how you're bridging that into the people strategy. But before we do, I'd be remiss to ask, you threw in lumber camp very briefly. And so I'd love to know, what is lumber camp?
I mean, it's really teaching somebody the home building process, right? What does a takeoff mean, right? Somebody hands you a set of plans and says, even if it's as simple as a deck, I want to build this deck. You've got to be able to say, well, okay, it's this many linear foot of lumber and I need footers, and how does the building process work? So it's really that new manager trainee coming and understanding construction. I mean, we've got a mock house here on campus that we take the manager trainees through and show them, here's what framing looks like, here's a header, here's how windows are installed, here's what flashing is, here's what house wrap is, really teaching them the products and the process and how to do takeoffs and how to make sure you're counting linear foot correctly and how much trim is actually in that house, that kind of stuff. So it's really going through in great detail the tools and the tips and the way that you need to be able to learn this construction and building materials industry to be able to sell products and, quite frankly, help our customers with their projects, whatever their project might be that they're coming in that manager trainee is going to have to help with.
And I could be a manager candidate or manager trainee and have no background in construction and go through this process, right? That's what this is partially designed for.
100%. If you worked construction in the summer during college or something like that, probably gives you a little bit of a head start, but you do not need to know how to swing a hammer or know the difference between a 2x4 and a sheet of plywood. We can absolutely teach it to you and train it.
That's phenomenal. I definitely need to see some photos and stuff of this, Paul. I'll get that from you afterwards. That sounds incredibly cool. The other part that's so fascinating to me is coming from the world of IT, because one of my closest stakeholders is our chief information security officer and our head of IT. So I'm curious, how is your background in that gave you a head start, just like working construction in the summers, in the people realm as well?
How I've led a technology organization is great leaders and great lieutenants under me on the IT side that even enabled me to consider this, to be able to take on both of these roles. So that's probably step one. Building a fantastic and a professional HR team on the recruiting and HR operations and training and leadership development side, learning and development side certainly helped that as well. But I think a lot of it is asking good questions, what's working, what's not, what do you need, what's in the way, what's on your stupid list, those kind of things. And then a lot of it was making sure we understood who our key partners were. If I think about my technology journey and career, it's been really strategic partnerships and relationships with key vendors, key partners, quite frankly. I don't even like to use the term vendors, that have been part of what our success. Hey, look, we're going to bet on this. One of our anchor technologies or foundational technologies is XYZ. Who is that? Let's make sure this is truly a strategic partnership. We're doing quarterly business reviews. You understand our roadmap. We understand yours. I think things like that are what I tried to take into some of the early days in my career on the HR side as well, right? Okay, we get a lot of our candidates from Indeed. How are we leveraging Indeed? How are we talking to Indeed? Do we have strategic account managers there? What are other people doing that we're not? Just asking lots of good questions about recruiting and our positions and our application process and our job descriptions and our branding and our messaging related to recruiting. And then it was listening to all the folks out in the field. We did things like instant drug tests. Our drug tests were taken, it was only 48 hours, but in a competitive hiring environment, sometimes those 2 days can do it. We found ways to do instant drug testing where we had drug testing results in 15 minutes. Just things like that, taking friction out of the process, getting to how can we do things better, faster, smarter, figuring out where the challenges were and how to get some of the barriers out of the way.
The people operations piece nowadays is so heavily technologically reliant, right? So it's incredible how even reducing some of the testing from 48 to instant can materially change how many people are successfully onboarding in this type of competitive environment. And I work at an AI infrastructure company when I'm not podcast hosting. I'm curious, Gen AI, how much utilization or what are some unique use cases that you all have been dabbling with?
Yeah, certainly in recruiting, we're absolutely using it really from a candidate matching perspective. Here's our job description. Here's the candidate profile. Who's the most likely based on background, experience, knowledge, skills, the information that you have about that person, who's most likely to be a matched candidate. We had a lot of recruiters that do that all day long, searching databases and trying to match that opportunity with that candidate. I think that certainly adds speed to it, gets a higher hit rate. And then we've even used it to draft that initial outreach message, right? So, hey, look, Taylor, I know you've got this background. This looks like you're a great fit for this role because of X, Y, and Z that we've seen. We'd love to talk to you more about our opportunity. It doesn't automatically send them out or anything like that, but it'll craft that personalized outreach email for that candidate that's helped us raise materially our positive response rate to some of those first outreach contacts. So that's one area. Certainly in training and content development, content creation, translation, you won't like this, but we're using it to create some podcast content for that manager trainee, some of those modules. That's sort of a study guide for our MTs that they can just listen to a podcast. And it's actually an AI generated voice that's taking some of our training content and creating a review of each module, things like that. So I don't know, that's if we're using it in cybersecurity and some coding and development, some of the contract stuff. Those are some of the other areas, but those are a few interesting and unique words.
I actually love it. There are times where, even for our listeners, now right now I'm a human, I can attest to that, but where we have to do reshoots and scheduling can be quite tight, or as Paul knows, I get stuck in a TSA line somewhere. We use AI to make those adjustments with my voice. So there are ways that we can use it. But what I love, Paul, with your examples is still you have a human in the loop. Yeah, you're leveraging your existing employees to use their expertise, but to be augmented by AI. And we have found that with all of our clients, it has been an important aspect to success, but also bottoms up. Some of your most interesting ideas can come from employees that may not even have any background in AI, that they're like, hey, Paul, I'm just interested in this because it takes up so much of my time. I think we could do it better. So interesting to see that. Now, as we come in here for a landing, just a couple more questions for you. One area that just naturally comes up out of everything that you've been doing with the development of your employees, let's turn to the development that you've had. What has been some of the best career advice that you've received?
Yeah, I'll go back to my Dick's Sporting Goods days. I was a rising director and VP in supply chain systems, and hair on fire. We were growing. We were trying to build it to last and manage the growth, but manage it correctly, and just tons of fun, tons of great stuff going on. But man, it was hair on fire and it was crazy at times. And sometimes you let things get frustrated. And I was a get her done kind of guy, wanting to get the issues out of the way. So I had a mentor in my career. One day I went into her office. And I was like, I don't understand why we keep messing around with this, or why can't we make these decisions? And just sort of frustrated. And she sat me down and she said, hey, look, Paul, there are many things in your life and in your career that you cannot control, but every day you choose your attitude. So have that positive attitude. Don't become that energy vampire. Keep a positive outlook. Don't worry about the things that you can't control. It really changed my outlook in the way that I managed through the rest of my career, and it's been pretty impactful. So you choose your attitude is one of the things that I've certainly taken with me, and it's been pretty influential in my career.
Now, many of our listeners are at the more senior or executive level now, but we do have a cohort of people that are just entering the workforce in their maybe first or second role in HR. What advice do you have for them?
Listen and ask good questions. You know what? You don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes you think you have to have all the answers, and you really don't. Sometimes asking good questions is better. I think it's more empowering. It's more enabling. We always live by retail as detail, and you've got to know your things, and you've got to know what's going on. You've got to understand where you're at with your projects and what the issues are. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Some of it's the how you ask questions, right? Don't put people on the defensive with well, why do you do it that way, right? It's, can you show me that? Or how do you think about that? Just continuing to learn and listen and ask questions will bring you a lot of answers and a lot of potential, and will help you grow as an individual and probably make the organization better than just coming in with all the answers and think you're the smartest person in the room and you got to have all the answers. That's probably one that I would guide with.
I always try to bring up some of these facts in my journey here. Is I used to be that person, Paul, early in my careers. I just thought I knew it all. And I had a mentor, Michael Arisman, CHRO at DocuSign, changed my career. He, similar to, sounds like what you've done in mentoring people, is provide a level of humility that's needed to get someone into a position that they're willing to grow. And I'm so thankful for having mentors like Michael, and it sounds like having folks around like you that are giving this advice, but really encouraging people to be vulnerable. And what I had found too is people love to teach, right? People like to share their experience. And so sometimes it's just asking. But the final question, likely the easiest for you, if people want to reach out and connect with you, Paul, what's the best way to do that?
I'm a big LinkedIn guy. I think it's a great opportunity to stay connected and understand what's happening. And that's definitely the best way to grab me.
Excellent. Paul, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. It was a pleasure. And I hope your listeners get a lot out of this and something they can take away.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the TroopHR Podcast. If you've liked this episode, we would encourage you to like and subscribe. If you would like to learn more about the TroopHR community, you can reach out to TroopHR.com. In the meantime, keep living the dream.